My name is Isabel, and I'm Jean's sister. And thank you for the privilege of doing this, try and get through it. John Victor Farrow was born October 28, 1923, in Calgary, Alberta. His parents were Frank and Kathleen Mee Hawking. He was raised in a family with a deep faith in God. That faith was passed down to John's own family, including his grandchildren. When I heard of his passing on December 27th, 2016, so the first thought I had was a scripture in 2 Corinthians 5:1, and I quote from the Message. We know that when these bodies of ours are taken down like tents and folded away, they will be replaced by resurrection bodies in heaven, made by God, not handmade, and we'll never have to relocate our tents again. John's tent has been folded for the last time. And I got to thinking, he folded his tent and moved on many times in his life. He was born in Calgary, Alberta, but shortly after he was born, they moved to Craigmile, Alberta, which is about, I forgot to ask how far, 2-3 hours northeast of Calgary. And his parents started a homestead there. From there, they moved to Prince George, BC, and it's interesting that Greg is, where is he? He lives in Prince George now, grandson. John had most of his schooling there, and then they moved to Burquitlam, which I hadn't heard of before, where John was able to further his education. He obtained a degree in science and agriculture at UBC. Apparently Burquitlam is like a ways from Westminster, something like that. His father purchased a dairy farm at Fort Langley, and John worked together with him in that venture. At the same time, John continued to keep the family farm going at Craigmile, Alberta. This required travel from Fort Langley to Craigmile every spring and fall. And God had his hand in all that traveling, because it was at a church in Craigmile that John met the love of his life, Jean Hunter. I was only 7 at the time, but I remember him coming to our farm for Sunday dinners. He always told the story with a twinkle in his eye of how he was convinced that Jean and my mom, Martha Hunter-Scheller, had set a trap for him. On his first visit, the tile floor was clean and shiny, and his cowboy boots were like skis. He slipped and fell flat on his back. I'm not sure the date that was, but anyway, they were married June 16th, 1948, at the Scheller farm. So began their adventure of travel back and forth, Fort Langley, Craigmile, twice a year. Then their first child, David, was born on July 31st, 1949. Again, I remember getting the phone call about David being born and running all the way out to the field to tell my mom the baby was here. And when David was only 3 weeks old, they came to do harvest in Craigmile. That was quite an adventure, I would say, in those days around that Big Bend highway. Later, John and his dad purchased a ranch at Princeton, BC. John and Jean moved to the ranch in Princeton where Joanne, where is she? Over there, was born on July 27th, 1952. I've got memories of visiting there, especially one Christmas when my folks and I stayed with him. My dad slept in the spare bedroom with his fur hat on because it was so cold. There was frost on the walls and on the window. Their trips to Alberta continued until the untimely death of his father in the summer of 1953, and I believe he was only in his 50s. Then John and Jean moved from the Princeton ranch back to the dairy farm. During that time, Susan was born on October 13th, 1955, and Francis was born July 12th, 1960. John took a position as agriculture manager at the Pacific National Exhibition in Vancouver. Then, and I don't know how many years he was there, Doesn't matter. In 1968, John accepted a teaching position in the Animal Sciences program at the Northern Lights College in Dawson Creek, BC. He also became the head of the agriculture department of the college. John and Jean enjoyed traveling with the students across Canada to various farming operations and schools. They also ran a grain and cow-calf operation while in Dawson Creek. In 1981, a major fire destroyed most of their farming machinery, and in 1984, he retired from the college. Then John, Jean, David and family, and Susan and family packed up their tents and moved to China Valley. If you're following along, John already had packed his tent up quite a few times. I think it must run in the family, Joy. China Valley is near Chase, BC, or Falkland, where they farmed for a few years, and ranched, I should say. They then sold that operation, and John and David purchased a property in Pritchard near Kamloops and ran a feedlot and hay operation. From the hay ranch, they moved into Kamloops, where they changed residence a few times. Private home overlooking the golf course, another home in Estrada, then to Berwick, an independent living facility. And in 2012, John and Jean moved to Abbotsford to Hallmark. They were there for about 2 years, and then they moved to a condo near Susan. John enjoyed going around the condo area on his motorized scooter until his health began to fail. In 2016, after several months of declining health, he required more care and was moved to Bellin Village. This was especially difficult for the family, as John had always been a strong patriarch of the family. Wherever John and Jean lived, they were involved in the community. John was on school, church, and livestock boards, and on the bank advisory board. He was a Sunday school teacher, a scout leader, and which took up his spare time. He joined the Gideons in 1972 and served for many years with them. When he was in his early 70s, he took lessons in painting and produced numerous beautiful oil paintings which adorn the walls of family and friends. And you can see some of those paintings out there. He passed away December 27th, 2016, when God folded John's tent for the last time and brought him home to his final resting place with a new body, free of limitations and pain. He was predeceased by his parents, Francis and Kathleen, his sisters Lorraine and Mildred, and his brother Alfred. Thanks to mourn his legacy, his wife Jean of 68 years, son David and Laura Farrow of Kamloops, BC, Joanne and Richard Marble of Dayton, Washington, Susan and Art Bourne of Abbotsford, BC, and Francis and Doug Weller of Gilroy, California, as well as 7 grandchildren and 17 great-grandchildren. And I wrote a little poem. His tent is folded one last time, years of moving ended. We thank our Father God for blessing us through this special man. His integrity, faith, and love will continue as his legacy. He had a twinkle in his eye, even in trials and sorrows. For now, we must say goodbye until we meet again. To see him in his new tent, settled forever in the presence of his Savior, Jesus Christ. And in the words of John's favorite Irish prayer, may the road rise up to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, may the sun shine warm upon your face, the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
I'll start, I guess. I'm usually the spokesperson for this bunch sometimes. Can everybody hear me? No, I don't like mics. John's third child, second daughter. I have to admit I really struggle to know what to say about Dad today. The memories I have of the last few months and weeks were pretty much at the forefront for me. But one memory from the past that has kept popping up was he told me once that I was the one that gave him gray hair. I'm not so positive on that point, as I remember I am the third child. He had two ahead of me that started the process. But I always told him that the gray hair made him look very distinguished, which usually made him smile. The main memory, though, that I want to share is Dad's love of a good find. There were many Saturday mornings that I had the privilege of taking Mom and Dad out to garage sales, and Dad, he loved to go to garage sales. I'd pick them up and always remember Dad saying as he got in the car, well, there isn't really anything we need today, but inevitably we would come back with quite a bit of stuff for his house. So we could never pass up a good deal. He was thrilled when he was able to find awesome deals on picture frames for his paintings, which he had tons of. We always teased him that the frames would be left over long after he finished painting, which they were. I had to get rid of several. But this memory came to me as I was shopping to find the frames for Dad's pictures today, here on this table and out there. I went to the thrift store in his honor, and I found those frames for 50 cents each, so I know that he will be very proud of that today. Dad, I love you, and boy do I miss you, but I'm thankful that you're happy and healthy again with our Lord and Savior.
I'm David, number one son. Anyway, the only son, but I've got a few things to tell about Dad. He was a kind father and a loving father, a bit of a disciplinarian. But he was always there for you, be it 4-H showing calves or in the Cub Scouts. And I farmed with him for 35 years. We do miss him. Excuse me. The one thing I'll never forget is he loved to go to auction sales, and he loved to dicker at the farm equipment dealers. It'd take 2 or 3 hours to buy equipment sometimes, but in the end, he usually had the best deal. Him and the dealer at that time was Nick Chaban in Dawson Creek. It was funny to see. Keep passing this paper back and forth. But Dad, you're gone forever, but we miss you. Thank you.
Well, I'm Frances, and I'm the youngest, so I guess I missed out on the disciplinarian stuff. But my dad was truly my hero, and love him dearly. But I wanted to tell you 3 quick little stories. When I was on my 16th birthday, well, first of all, my dad was really, to me, a man of quiet strength. He didn't waste a lot of words, and he always would say, I remember going to church oftentimes, and he'd come home and he's like, you know, that pastor could have said that in half the time if he would have cut out half those words. But he really, to me, was a man of quiet strength. And when I was 16, on my 16th birthday, Mom and Dad and I went on a little road trip, and we went to Missoula, Montana, or up that way, and we stopped that night in Missoula. And Dad was like, you know, I can't drive anymore. And it was late in the day. Well, there was some convention in town, and there were no motels. Everything was no vacancy, no vacancy. We found this one place, vacancies, with, well, they said, we have one little room in the back here that hadn't been remodeled. So we're like, okay, we'll take it. And there was 2 bedrooms, and so Mom and Dad slept in the one, I slept in the other. I could not sleep, so I had the light on, and I'm sitting up in the bed, and Dad comes in about 1 o'clock in the morning, and he says, what are you doing? And I said, well, I just can't sleep. He says, you go climb in with Mom. And he said, I'll sleep in here. Well, the next morning, he comes out covered in red welts. There were bed bugs in the bed. He didn't say a word. He's just like, no, that was some night. So again, quiet strength. Then when I was 18, and David and Laura had just gotten married in June, and it was September, and I was going off to college in Portland, and we were living in Dawson Creek. And I remember going up to the window of my bedroom and just looking out the window and started to cry. And Dad came in, didn't say a word, just put his arms around me. cried with me. Again, a man of quiet strength. Then when I was 21, I was engaged to be married, and invitations were out, everything was done, and he came to me and he said, "Frances, you don't seem like you're happy to be getting married." And I thought about it, and I thought, "Yeah, you're right, Dad." And so I called the wedding off. And he said, he said, "That was the hardest thing one of the hardest things I ever did." He said, "I was afraid I was going to lose you. You could have just said, 'Forget it, Dad,' and gone off." And I know my dad loved me so much. And I loved him. I'm going to miss him a lot. Thanks, Dad.
Rock, paper, scissors, or am I out? So I guess I'm the oldest grandson here, so I guess why it's my turn.
Yeah.
I'm Patrick. This is my mom, Joanne, here. One of the things I just wanted to say about my grandfather was I remember being probably 12 or 13 at the time, and we lived in Princeton, and we'd come up there in the summer, and I loved to play on the three-wheelers, which, you know, kids can't do now because they're just not safe. And there was a field just below the house, and I took the three-wheeler down there, and the thing died on me. It wouldn't run. And I remember the whole time I'm pushing this thing back to the house, just dreading having to tell my grandfather that I broke the three-wheeler. He comes out, he hits the kill switch, and walks off laughing. So that was all I wanted to say.
I just want to say just a couple things. He was the most patient man. I think we can all agree that he gave us patience. Quick story. Well, as a kid growing up on the farm, I can't ask for anything better than to be able to grow up on the farm and work alongside him. And we would bale hay in the middle of the night, and he'd go out sometimes 2 or 3 times to check it. And I'd wait for him to come back. And just waiting for him to come back, and I heard that truck rattle down the road, and I knew he was coming back, and sometimes he'd say, "No, we gotta wait." And he'd do that 2 or 3 times a night, and then finally it was time to go. That was one of my favorite memories of him.
I'm Glenn. I'm David and Laura's son, and the youngest grandchild here today. I had the fortunate experience of living in either the same house or the same property with Grandma and Grandpa. I speak a lot at work. Bigger crowds, simple. This is different. Until I was 21. I lived with him in the transition between selling the farm in 2000 and getting married in 2003. One of my early remembrances of him was he was too old and I was too young to throw bales of hay. And I was so frustrated. But having him there by my side was so good. I also remember hours and days of riding along in the silage truck, along in the farm, as well as the feed truck, getting feed in Armstrong. Another memory I had was in my grade 12 year. I dyed my hair blonde. And Grandpa thought it was absolutely nuts. What was I doing dyeing my hair blonde? I did something stupid, I forget what it was. And he wouldn't let it go because I had blonde hair. What were you thinking, kid? So that was pretty funny. I admired him for his education, and he strived for excellence in all that he did. I appreciate the fact that he was always direct and held to his beliefs, no matter what it was. He was a man of faith and conviction at all times. I distinctly remember Grandpa speaking up at a church AGM against the new building that was going to be close to Fortune Drive in Kamloops. He was firmly against it, and he spoke his mind at that meeting. At that time, there was not much support, but eventually it turned out that the building was going to be relocated, and I was so proud of him for standing up for what he believed in at that moment. It was always clear to me where Grandpa stood on any topic. I remember the endless discussions regarding the latest forms of church worship music with my girlfriend, fiance, and now Sarah. I don't even know why there's drums on the stage. He was dedicated to his family. Grandpa was not only a grandpa to his 7 biological grandchildren, but also to Sarah and her brother Josh. Anytime I had a friend over to help out on the farm, they were always intrigued and impressed by him and wished they had a grandfather just like him. He was always able to have those difficult conversations. I remember a few courageous conversations Grandpa had with me, but we won't get into those here. He was well versed in many areas: painting, gardening, welding, castrating, other than that one sheep. That one time. Branding, driving, photography. My hero. Driven and passionately pursued his dreams. Dependable and consistent. The zero tolerance of repetitive worship music and alcohol, that twinkle in his eye, the love for sweets, the hate for cats. They say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So I will take great honor in carrying the Farrow name and continuing the legacy of John Victor Farrow. I have much to pass on to my son Daniel, the carrier of the Farrow name. Cheerio.